So WWE 2K22 is coming out in March. It's not exactly a delay. It's just coming out later. But there's another game that is coming out potentially later on that year, and I think that 2K22 should be a little bit worried. Let's get into that episode right now. Ladies and gentlemen, good weekend, good day, happy all out weekend. It's here, it's Sunday, I think. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Assemble. I'm Matt. Great to have you back here on the show. So today, a little bit of 2K22, but let's give you some reasons why they should be worried about that competition that's out there. WWE themselves does not like to admit that they have competition, but we're talking AEW and the AEW console game that is going to be coming out hopefully in 2022. And let's get into it a little bit. Let's talk about some of those little fantasy bookings and the reasons why WWE should be a little bit worried about the 2K game that is being delayed, that is never going to really come out, and it may just crush us, and why they should be worried that AEW's game might actually kind of own the conversation. Before we get into the episode, if you guys can do me a favor, there's a lot of you out there that have been watching the show, so thank you very much. If you can, give it a thumbs up if you enjoy the episode, and please consider subscribing to the channel as well, because we've got tons of content coming out at you almost every single day of the bloody week, it feels like, doesn't it? One reason why WWE 2K and WWE should be worried about AEW's game later this year, one reason is the potential of a brand new mode. We have such little information from Kenny Omega and AEW Games regarding the game at this point because it's still in early development. But the one thing that we love to be able to speculate on is like, okay, we figure we're going to get some cool core match types in there, but what is going to be that hook? What is going to be that gameplay feature or element that is going to bring fans back into the game continuously every single day to play new games, to play new matchups, to potentially play online, things like that? And no, we cannot just say that the hook is going to be that there will be no melting faces in the AEW game. That's not enough. Could you imagine if Kenny's face is melting in that game? It's sickening, isn't it? 2K20? What they did there? Ugh. But does it mean that we would get something like a GM mode, a franchise mode, a season mode? Maybe they want to go into a different direction. Maybe they want to give us something like that old championship mode that we had with the old WrestleMania 2000 No Mercy games. To me, there's going to be something. Whenever a wrestling game is going to come out, they want to make sure that they have some mode in there because it's still falling in line with sports franchises, and you want to be able to get outside of just traditional exhibition and give fans a reason why they want to keep coming back. And again, that could be a GM, a season mode, a actual championship mode, or it could be as simple as going through and doing your create a star and going through the ranks of AEW, going from, playing on Dark and doing matches there, getting all the way up to Dynamite and going into the pay-per-views and so on. Obviously, we have to wait and see, but it'd be really neat to know what AEW would be pulling off when it comes to a potential mode. The other reason why I say they could have a potential mode built in there, guys, is because AEW likes to follow a little bit more of a sports feel to their programming. And what I mean is that they have the ranking system built in, right? Tony Khan, Cody Rhodes, everybody touted the ranking that they use with their stars to make sure that wins and losses matter. And that's a reason why their certain stars would actually get prompted to get title shots or move up into the rankings, obviously, is based off of their win-loss record, which is a really cool feature, really cool thing that they actually add into their programming. So I'd like to see if they would actually do that when it came to their game and see how they can incorporate the wins and losses. And that makes me speculate as to why I think 2K should be worried about this game, because AEW could come out of the gate with something different and fresh that fans maybe haven't seen in years, or something entirely new. Now, I did mention the games like No Mercy, WrestleMania 2000, the YUKES engine, the engine that we grew up on. It's you and me. We love those games. 2K had it forever. SmackDown vs. Raw had it. Things fell apart. Relationships were burned. Things went south. And the result of that was them spitting out 2K20. Now we get 2K22. It says it's rebuilt. Don't know what that means. But with the little tiny snippet and glimpse that we got of Darby Allin in that gameplay moment a few months ago, we could see that engine thriving. We could see it in front of us, and we could see that they are totally going to be tapping in to that element of those classic games that we grew up on as kids and we love so much, because the core gameplay and mechanics were tight. They were solid. We loved it. We loved that loop of it all. It felt solid and it felt like it would work. And on new consoles, on new generation hardware, that engine could get a whole new breath of life, and we could see it go on for years to come and be truly, truly special for us with the AEW games. And on that same note, I feel like with AEW, and you let me know in the comments below, but I feel like with AEW, the stars, everybody is given a little bit more freedom over there than they do with WWE. And I wonder if that would also be true when it comes to the actual video game. With 2K, and we hear right now with all of the kind of strained relationship that's going on between 2K and WWE themselves, wanting to get the game out on time, 2K wanting to push the game out further because it's not ready. With WWE being so gigantic and really pushing these games to get out like clockwork in the October season, regardless of how they function, and it causes a detriment to the game itself, I wonder if AEW goes in the other direction with YUKES and allows them to have more creative freedom, take more time with the game development, and actually produce something that is solid, the mechanics work, and we don't have these giant glitches, and we have something that is completely smoothed out and ready for players when it actually launches. Like maybe we don't get 10 patches in the game, that would be wild. Now I mentioned more freedom when it comes to AEW, and I think that's very apparent when we talk about their freedom and the freedom of choice to work with other promotions. And it leads me to wonder what kind of crossover we could see with this AEW game, where we could see some influence and some stars brought in from Impact Wrestling or from New Japan themselves. Because we've seen crossovers from AEW stars going over to Impact, going over to New Japan, and vice versa, and coming in and folding into the AEW promotion. That allows them to have a little bit more creativity, and I wonder if it will allow them to expand that roster to make it a little bit bigger. And on that note, let's talk about that roster, because that's probably one of now, in this current moment where we're sitting today, we're on the cusp of All Out. We got CM Punk back in there. Bryan Danielson might debut. Adam Cole is up in the air. Braun Strowman is somewhere lifting stuff. There is so much talent. There are so many stars out there that are working with AEW now or could be with AEW in the very near future. And they could be giant, giant pieces of the puzzle, especially when you look at their video game and putting them on the cover and advertising and showcasing them to bring in lapsed fans in to try out their new game. That's one big reason, in my opinion, why WWE and 2K Games, assuming 2K will still be around with them in this partnership going forward, why they should be worried about AEW, because that roster alone is stacked. And not just stacked with current roster and stars that we have, not just the potentials, but the legends that AEW brings in over time, where we can have Jake the Snake Roberts, we can have Sting in there, Arn Anderson, potentially Ric Flair can show up. With that allowed freedom for AEW to bring in more stars, we can see more legends come in that are not under a WWE contract, and they could come in to AEW. Even if they're not on TV, they could potentially just give their likeness and give that over for the actual game development. I think of someone like Kurt Angle, who is going to be in the Wrestling Code. And not just Kurt Angle, but so many other stars, independent stars that are in that game. Why not have them showcase potentially in AEW's game as well, if they keep things a little bit more open? We're so used to how 2K, WWE create the game and have the superstars in that game that we just assume it all has to be those contracted stars that are with AEW, that are on the TV currently on the product. Otherwise, it doesn't work. That's just the one way we've known it to go and to be. It doesn't have to be that way. That's just what those companies have done with their video game product and how they've chosen to develop it. Tony Khan, Kenny Omega, everyone working at AEW Games could take things in a different direction and different strategy. I don't know, but that's just what I would hope. And I'd stay hopeful and positive that we could see something totally different. But with that roster being as stacked as it is, with CM Punk, potentially Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson, you got all of the elite with Kenny Omega at the top, Hangman Page, Sting's in there, Cody Rhodes. I think we mentioned CM Punk already, but it's gigantic. Darby Allin, Britt Baker, the entire women's division, Lucha Brothers, Jurassic Express. There is so much talent in here that it gets me as a wrestling fan super excited to see what they could do. And because these stars are much more central in around the independents and they work with AEW, but they could go off in a year and work with Impact, doesn't mean that it would be a problem with them still being in the video game. And that's what I'm really excited about, to see what AEW does, because that could actually springboard them ahead a lot, in my opinion, and start trumping WWE and 2K with their title that is coming out every single year. The other thing is that AEW may not annualize their game. If you go through all of the news and the updates when it comes to AEW games, they're planning to have a multi-year roadmap when it comes to their gaming division. And that's great news because that means it's healthy, that they are investing in it, that Tony Khan and everybody else at the head of the table, not Roman Reigns, but everybody else at the top there is focusing on this as being a pivotal aspect of their marketing, of their promotion, of their expansion of their product. But what it could mean is that we don't end up with the game every single year from AEW. It may mean that we get something that might allow us to breathe with that game for several years. We might not see an AEW game for 2 to 3 years at a time, but that could be okay based on how the engine is used, how the roster is updated. Maybe they make it much more of a live game where there are live updates where they can patch in new stars, new arenas, new updates, new modes, and keep it as basically an entire platform versus trying to annualize this thing. And that can make AEW completely different from 2K and the way WWE has always done their strategy with their games. And that should make WWE and 2K very worried because of that competition. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think about AEW games? What are you excited to see? What do you want to see from them? And should 2K be worried about that competition over there on Wednesday nights? Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I'm Matt here on Assemble, and as always, thank you all for assembling with us. See ya.